Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Radhe and today I'll be breaking down the second episode of the MCU animated series What If. In the last video of What If breakdowns, we discussed how the choices made by Peggy Carter changed the lives of Steve Rogers and others around her. For today's video, we will discuss about the choices made by Yondu and T'Challa and how it affected an entire universe. So let's begin. The now familiar voice of Watcher, played by Jeffrey Wright, welcomes us and describes the multiverse. The main themes of these episodes are those events that form a branched reality, and the branched reality is affected by the destiny of one or more individuals. And in this case, it's T'Challa. Although it's Yondu Odanta who creates the Nexus event, but it's the nature of T'Challa and how he changes the outcome of various scenarios with his unique abilities forms the base of this episode. The show begins with the familiar landscapes of Morag, which we have earlier visited in Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and in the Avengers Endgame. If you remember, it was the safe house of the Power Stone, which was stolen by Peter Quill and by Rhodey and Nebula in Avengers Endgame. We see a familiar figure approaching the temple vault or the temple of the Power Stone. Star-Lord enters the temple and uses his gravity gadget to extract the orb, but soon he is surrounded by Korath and his men. Star-Lord deactivates his helmet and we see the first glimpse of T'Challa. Korath recognizes him and wants to join his team of Ravagers, but T'Challa refuses his request and asks him to fight for the orb. He soon subdues Korath and the other two guards with his quick thinking and the gravity gadget. T'Challa rethinks about his decision and recruits Korath, but he is surrounded by a horde of Ronan's guards when he steps outside the temple. Luckily, Yondu comes to his rescue and the three of them with the orb fly away. We soon find out that the nature of T'Challa has rubbed upon everyone and the Ravagers have left the path of thievery and deceit and now help galaxies to live peacefully and without any conflict. In the flashback shown to us by the Watcher, we find out that T'Challa was abducted by Yondu's subordinates who mistakenly kidnapped T'Challa instead of Peter Quill. T'Challa is presented with the opportunity of exploring the universe and he gladly accepts. He wants to go back to his homeland only to be informed by Yondu that Wakanda was destroyed and there's nothing left back there for him. So he stays with the Ravagers and changes their way of thinking and thus changes the universe. Back in real time, T'Challa and his group of Ravagers celebrate their victory and we see a new transformed Thanos who has left his old ways of thinking and now respects the order of the world. He is convinced by T'Challa that his way of genocide is not the only way to help the starving and deteriorating ways of the population. T'Challa meets with Nebula, who has a mission for him and the Ravagers. She wants to steal an article from Tiwan's collection which could help the galaxies. The article being the Embers of Genesis. But Yondu discards the notion of taking part in the mission because Tawan is involved. After Thanos changing his ways, Tawan is the big bad in this universe and his facility in Nowhere is heavily guarded by the Black Order. The power of Tawan is later shown in this episode. T'Challa convinces Yondu to join the mission and the team hatches a plan. T'Challa hatches a plan to steal the embers from Tiwan's collection using the distraction caused by the Ravagers. The Black Order soon finds out about the plan and locks down the entire facility. Howard the Duck joins T'Challa for a brief period, but soon he's distracted and we see a Celestial manning the bar. When T'Challa enters the collection of spacecraft, his Wakandan necklace begins to glow and we find out that Collector has a Wakandan spacecraft. T'Challa activates the lock and finds out that his parents have never stopped looking for him. Nebula double-crosses T'Challa, or so it seems, and she hands over T'Challa to the Collector, who is already in search of him. The Collector imprisons T'Challa and orders Ebony Maw to dissect him. T'Challa uses his necklace to escape, but Ebony Maw subdues him using his powers. But soon, he is held by Karina, who was moved by T'Challa's views about slavery. T'Challa escapes and Nebula visits the cell in which all Ravagers are locked up. And once again, against all expectations, defies Collector and rescues the Ravagers. She explains the ruse and convinces them that T'Challa planned all of this. T'Challa is attacked by the Collector and soon we find out about the Collector's assorted weapons collection, which he has obtained from various superheroes and supervillains. The Collector uses the Necrosword of Hela, which we have previously seen in Thor Ragnarok. And how did that ended up in his collection is unclear. I mean, beating this woman is nearly impossible. On the other front, the Black Order chases the group of Ravagers and Nebula. Thanos and Nebula fight the Black Order and thus provide the Ravagers time to start their spacecraft. Nebula uses the embers to escape and joins the Ravagers. Yondu and T'Challa fight the Collector and overpower him using the same trick that Tony Stark used over Thanos. T'Challa locks the Collector in a cell and hands the control to Karina, who then releases all the prisoners who converge upon the Collector. T'Challa and Yondu leave nowhere using the Wakandan spacecraft. In the epilogue of the heist, T'Challa forgives Yondu and reunites with his family in Wakanda, where he is welcomed by everyone. In the end, we see the human form of Ego the Celestial, and he visits a Dairy Queen where Peter Quill is working. He introduces himself as his father, and the Watcher in the background expresses his concern over this event, calling it the end of the world. And we are again left with the promise of another story which may follow this storyline. As usual, the voice cast does a satisfying job, but listening to the voice of the late Chadwick Boseman in new media content is really heartwarming. I would like to praise his dedication towards his character and may his soul rest in peace. Matthew Chauncey brings a better plot to the table, and the changes in the universe are widespread, and that makes this episode more watchable than the previous one. The heist plot is definitely an improvement over the first episode, but this episode raises many questions like why did Thanos left his path of genocide so easily, and what did T'Challa talk to him about? Who orders Ronan to find the Power Stone? Was Ronan self-motivated, or is there some other entity that wants such power? How did the Collector bested superheroes and supervillains to capture their weapons? Did Civil War took place in this universe, and who are the Avengers? Maybe the questions will be answered in the future episodes, but for now we have to be content with what we have got. I love this episode for two reasons. Firstly, the voice cast, and secondly because of the story, which raises some questions but overall is quite satisfying. Do tell me in the comments which parts of this episode did you like better, and if you liked the video, like, share and subscribe would be very helpful. See you soon. Cheers.